just the frames. Got keys to kingdom, unlocking chains. Sober the podcast, open up your brains. Sober the podcast, let's get it, man.
Welcome back to another episode of Sober the Podcast with your host, Bradley Saxon, Mr. CJ Carlton.
What's up?
And we got a special guest in the lab today, Mr. Chad Mcbride, Mr. Sheriff Chad McBride.
Yes, sir. Good to be here.
Yes, sir. Thank you for giving us a little bit of time.
Absolutely.
And, you know, something I was talking with Chad before we got on the air was just how a lot of people, you know, view us through our title, right? But we're more than our title.
Yep.
You know, I think about Chad. I think about he's a dad.
Yeah.
He's a husband. You know, he's a son. And so these are facets I think a lot of people don't know. And some people love to hear it because a lot of people don't really relate to our victories, right? A lot of people relate to our frailties.
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, as I got older, I realized some of the things that I've had to work through that were hard for me are things that other people relate to that give them hope in times that, you know, they're having to do that, right? So a lot of what we try to do here, Chad, is we just sit on a couch, even the playing field, and equally share our need for Jesus.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yep.
You know, you strip the titles and strip all that. We all need Jesus, you know? And a lot of people always wonder, well, how did he even start a relationship with Jesus, you know? So before we jump into that story, CJ is going to start out with 3 questions. An icebreaker, we usually it's become something really cool to do because I think it just settles in the guest.
Yeah.
It's funny. I mean, I'm not saying that Chad's nervous, but like I've seen many people who have like Woodrow.
Yeah.
Like he's played in front of thousands and thousands of people.
It's
But I
just
felt like
different.
he was more nervous sitting there
It's just different.
than he might have been playing in front of 85,000 at Death Valley. So I think this icebreaker's been pretty neat to just sort of bring some like chill. Because I mean you know, dude, we not stressing over here.
So I got a surprise question.
Don't do him like that. See,
Look, I got a surprise question because I promised my buddy I would ask. So the first question, all right, is how many times have y'all arrested John Yates?
can you answer that question? Do you know the name?
I don't know the answer to that question.
All right, good deal.
But do you know the name?
I recognize the name.
Yeah.
I'd have to.
Well, it's funny because he's one of our directors here.
Yeah.
Right.
But when he was a resident, he was out doing something with another one of our guys, and the sheriff's office seen him and didn't have to. You know what I mean? Like
Didn't know he was in recovery.
didn't know he was in recovery,
Yeah.
but he had warrant. And I mean, you know, just like a rap sheet like this, but he must have been in there
Yeah.
because
I
he's
told
in
him
the
I was gonna
office
get
now.
him. Yeah, I told him I was going to get him. All right, so.
But you don't have to answer that. That was just for fun.
Yeah, so
got you.
how many national championships has Clemson football won?
Well, 3.
3. All right, there's one.
Hey, that's easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Let's go.
Easy breezy. Who was the head coach of the first Clemson national championship team?
The legendary Danny Ford.
Oh, legendary.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
You might see him at Dyer's Diner.
I do actually see him occasionally at Doctor's Diner. That or Boondocks on Fridays.
Hey.
Yeah, I like Boondocks.
That's right. Yeah.
Me
2 for 2.
Well, they started selling like the meat and 3 deal because I
Yeah.
don't think that was always the case when they first opened.
I think the owner had 2 restaurants at one time. One was a meat and 3, and the other
He just brought them together.
Brought them together, and which is great.
Yeah.
You get me around
Love-
a meat and 3.
Love some food.
Yeah, we might have to go today.
It's a meat and 4.
Can't do that on Monday though.
No.
Oh, you'd be a nap. Be time to take a nap.
Yeah, that's a Friday dude.
That's
Yeah,
right.
there's no doubt.
Yeah.
So this was probably the one that I was skeptical about the most. So what Clemson player was the closest to winning a Heisman Trophy?
That'd have to be Deshaun Watson.
Oh, 3 for 3. Ding.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. There
Let's
we go.
go.
Sheriff on point.
Sheriff
this
on
morning.
point. So at the end of the show, Chad, we'll get to see if you have a 3-pointer.
Yep.
And CJ's bent that gold, like it's at the fair, like maybe 1 out of 100 make it. Nah, I'm just kidding. I think everybody's made it.
Yeah, everybody's made it.
Or at least attempted, and
Yep.
we recorded it as if they made it. John works some magic. But again, man, thank you for coming and spending some time with us. I'm sure CJ can't say this, but I voted for you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Obviously, I graduated high school with your wife.
Yeah.
I mean, we went to school together from kindergarten, and I know her, and I know what kind of woman she is. But, in voting, man, like I never realized when I was in addiction how important electing the right officials, to bring justice. Because, I mean, they're like in what we do, Chad, like we tend to want to go to court with these guys and bat with the solicitor, but there's some cases where there are men, even though they need treatment, they need jail.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's times where there's been 100 times you come in, like you probably need to go to jail, right? But there's some cases where there are these men that's just never been afforded the opportunity for treatment, and that's why we're here.
That's right.
And having a relationship with you over the years has just really afforded us to be able to serve these men in ways that we never could, So we appreciate what you're doing in Anderson County, and it looks like you're going to be just fine this year in the polls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're blessed this year. No opposition.
No opposition.
Well, you keep doing what you're doing, you might just be fine until you're ready to retire and go do whatever you want to do, Right now you got work to do, right?
That's right. That's right.
But a way that we typically frame these, I don't want to call them interviews, because not really interviews, just conversations, is we usually talk about what it was like with a person growing up, family life, because, you wouldn't imagine that some people come from broken and dysfunctional homes, and some people come from great homes, or whatever the case. And then we sort of move the conversation to when Jesus stepped into that equation.
Yep.
And then we talk about what it's like now as someone who is following Jesus.
Sure.
So you want to tell us a little bit of what it was like? Were you born? Are you from Anderson?
No, actually, I'm from Brenham, Texas.
Brenham, Texas.
Yep.
Wow.
We moved here when I was 10 years old from Brenham, Texas. So my parents forced me to South Carolina from Texas.
So why did they move from Texas to South Carolina? Job?
Yeah. So my dad was in Houston, worked for Gulf Oil back when there was Gulf gas stations everywhere. And Gulf sold out, and they offered him the same position. It was Chevron that bought him out. They offered him the same position in San Francisco, and he said, nope, not going to happen. And both my parents are from Atlanta, so they wanted to get closer to the southeast and didn't want to be in Atlanta. So Anderson was close enough, and my dad found a good job in Greenville, and that's how we got here.
So is that where you went to school, is in Greenville?
Anderson. So I grew up in Piercetown, and the big, huge community of Piercetown up there. Sue's Wings is our town hall.
Fellowship Hall.
Yeah, Fellowship Hall.
Fellowship Hall. My parents put me at Oakwood Christian School when I first came here.
Oh, we can throw a football from here.
Yeah, sure can.
How about that?
Stayed there for several years, and in hindsight, it was good for me. I got in a lot of trouble at Oakwood. Me and a buddy slipped off. There used to be a Bilo right here.
Oh, yeah.
And if y'all remember that, Lakewood Shopping Center here. So
yes, sir.
We slipped out one day, and we bought us this was, I guess we were in 5th grade. Bought us a Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you
Brought
did.
it back to Oakwood. Showed all. We did. Showed all the
Check
guys
this
at recess.
out.
Oh
Yeah.
And you really, if you can only imagine how much trouble we got in at Oakwood Christian School for that.
Yeah.
I don't think the paddling stopped the whole day.
I mean, probably not even when you got home.
Well,
Did Daddy wear you out?
No, I'm pretty sure Dad had high five me on
Oh,
that.
yeah, he did.
But yeah, that was a rough 5th grade year that. But I think I stayed on school restriction anyway for the most part. But After that, I went to, I guess I finally got in so much trouble at Oakwood that my parents let me go to public school. So, we lived in the Wren district, so I went to Wren High School.
Ah, okay.
Yep. So,
Hurricane? Is that right?
Hurricane.
Wren Hurricanes?
Yeah.
yeah. It's funny, a very rural school, and we're the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Ain't no doubt.
Of all the different mascots we could be. But no, yeah, that's kind of. Went to TL Hanna one year, and that was my senior year. Long story there, but I had friends, and still lived in Piercetown, but still had friends from Wren and Hanna, and of course I still have my buddies that I went to Oakwood with. And some of them stayed at Oakwood, some of them went to Westside, some of them went to Hanna, and so that's been good though. It's and like I said, when you look back. I learned a lot.
There's a lot of benefit.
Learned a lot of the Bible at Oakwood. Didn't realize I was learning it then. I think it's stuff that kind of resonated later in life.
Sure,
it helped with helps with that foundation.
Isn't that usually the way it is? You don't know the importance of something until you get farther away from it and look back and realize that there was some roots that were given that may have made me the man that I am today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you put a kid anywhere. They're gonna find trouble. Kids are emotional beings, and so there's not really a lot of reasoning and thinking in that situation. It's really a lot of what feels good, what other people are doing that highly influences it. Yep. And so, it don't matter if you're at Oakwood or wherever, you're typically going to find that kind of trouble, because of the human nature. But that's right. That's a story that I love to hear because it's like, oh, yeah, he's normal. Yeah. Right? Let's be honest. Most people look at us and view us after our gifting, and because we're gifted to do it, they think that we walk on water. But the truth is, man, we're human, and we have things in our past that we can laugh about now that we look back and say, "What a bonehead!" You know, what a bonehead. So, would you say that your home life was fairly normal?
I think so. I had very good parents. I was an only child, but I had very, very good parents. Me and my dad were very close, especially. Grew up around horses and stuff, so my mom was, and I love my mom, but she was always dealing with horse stuff and all that. And Dad was more of a ball player type guy, so a lot of times he was our coach of our teams, baseball teams and stuff like that. But my mom. She kind of had a rough upbringing. She grew up in children's homes in Atlanta, and of course, back then it was probably in the '60s. It was kind of probably a rough time to be in children's homes.
Sure.
So as soon as you were old enough to get out and work, it wasn't 18 then back then. It was when you were old enough to get out and work. And she started cleaning bathrooms at a Holiday Inn at 15 years old, and so I think with the way she grew up, my dad grew up in a very good Christian home and middle class and everything, and I think the two meshed together. I learned a lot from both of them. But all in all, I didn't grow up without. We had everything we ever needed, and God was good to my parents. My dad was an accountant. And so it was when we moved here from Texas. Obviously it was easy for him to find a job and stuff.
For sure.
But good upbringing. We went to Mount Pisgah Baptist Church over in Easley on Highway 88, and that's where I grew up in that church. And before New Spring, that's where I grew up. And we're kind of actually back there now. Again, it's
flourishing
full circle.
too.
Oh, it's flourishing big time, and we've loved it. We've loved being back visiting. We haven't, we still love New Spring, and of course we got Mount Pisgah, so we're still kind of teetering what we're trying to do right now. But that's where I gave my life to Jesus. Was at Mount Pisgah.
How old were you?
I was 10 years old.
How about that?
But I believe, and of course it's been a roller coaster since I've been 10. But I really felt, I know a lot of kids don't understand sometimes, and sometimes we worry about our children when they're very young and they accept Jesus, and you always want to make sure that they fully understand what they're doing.
Yeah,
I felt like I did.
Well, I mean, you think about this too, because here is like the misconception of getting saved is, I think a lot of people like say, "Well, did you really get saved?" Because then what they're saying
Yeah.
is you went through some problems. But what I've come to understand is that getting saved doesn't equal a seamless and problemless life. It just means now you're going through all
Yeah.
that with somebody.
Yep.
It's a journey.
Yeah,
and
it's a
the start of a
process.
journey, and because from here on out, it's a relationship.
Yeah.
So I agree with what you're saying, because I've heard that too, and I've heard that argument that, well, do they really know what they're doing, or are they sure because they're, not living the way they. But it's all about the relationship that comes from that.
Well, I felt the same way, Chad. Like my mom and dad didn't take me to church, but they like the Stipes. Like Matthew, his dad, Tom, and Beth were the ones who drug me to church
yeah.
from when I was a young boy until I chose to walk away. They picked me up in a station wagon.
Yeah.
I know he had worked for you
Yep.
for a long time, and we were best friends from far as back as I can remember. But they took me to church too, and I can remember like having these experiences and encounters with God that were really real.
Yeah.
But when at 14 I walked away and started getting into drinking and using, and then that's still in a decade of my life, I look back and I say, man, if it wouldn't have been for that relationship I began with God, I mean, who's to say I don't die in it? And even though I chose to walk away and was wayward, like I feel like the roots that were put in me at 22 is what brought me back
Absolutely.
and framed what I went through so that it could grow me up, you know? So I felt like I had that same experience at a young age. And I think over time, the pain and the problems really gave it more of a more depth and
substance.
weight,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
I don't think anybody, I don't care if you're 40 getting saved, I don't think anybody fully grasps what just took place.
Nah.
Only time can reveal more of what really took place, you know?
Yeah.
So I think we grew up in a time where it was, the gospel was more put out like a behavioral modification
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
But I think the older we got, we realized it was the power of God, and it had nothing to do with moralism.
That's
That it had to do with changing natures and learning how to surrender our will to God. But growing up in the time we did, it was, my mother would pinch me and say, if you don't listen, the devil gonna get you. That was her parenting method. So I got real scared of the devil because I can't hold my eyes open in Sunday morning church, And she's doing her best just to keep up her probably
Facade.
image, But like I'm, wear nice, you don't go to church and this and that, and I get some of that stuff. But I think that as we have our real experience with Jesus, when we get older, we start to chew the meat and spit out the bones, and we just realize what's real and what's not, So I relate to that story, man. I really do think that some of these younger kids, including my son, who had the same experience about a year and a half ago, that I feel like it's real.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like God's promise is if we can continue to do the best we can in training our kids in the way to go, that He'll let those roots be the thing that brings them back to that path. And I mean, that's the only thing we can rest assured in,
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's for me it was certainly a roller coaster. I rebelled as a teenager, as most teenagers do, and when you go and because you went to Pendleton, but when you're at a very rural school, there's not a whole lot to do.
Oh, there's not.
And and you already as teenagers you're rebellious anyway, and that just comes natural. But for me it was you got into drinking and stuff like that, and never really got in. Never. I had friends that dabbled in some drugs and stuff like that. For me, that wasn't my thing. It was beer, and stuff like that. And of course, went through all that as a teenager, and even through college. But that was. But there's those seasons of life where you walk away, and I look at it from being a dad and having that dad perspective.
Oh, yes.
And I have 3 daughters, and God, I love them so much, but they're going to go through phases of life where you just you teach them everything you can, you give them the right foundation, and they're going to walk away and they're going to do stuff. They're going to make mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
but they're still your daughter.
Yeah.
You still love them.
Oh,
you still want
100%.
them to, be right there with you and make all the decisions you wish they would make. And I'm sure that's how God feels about us. And and saying, hey, I love you, and that's obvious, and you're my child, but I've also given you free will. I don't like the decisions you're making right now, and I hope that you come back just like the prodigal son. But yeah, so definitely had those probably somewhat typical. I know there's some really good kids out there and stuff that probably didn't make choices like we made, but I certainly experimented with some wrong choices
For sure.
when I was a young person.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, CJ and I relate to that. I mean, except CJ, I mean, his didn't start till later on. When he got to college, he didn't really. I mean, I'm sure he made bad decisions, but his drinking really didn't escalate until he got to college. But think about drinking, Chad, is that there are some people that have a season with drinking, they abuse it, they look alcoholic, right? Like they made bad choices, maybe alcohol got them in trouble, but eventually giving them a significant enough reason to never do it again, or into that extent, they're able to do it on their own willpower, right? They reel it in. But for people like CJ and I, we drink no matter what,
Yeah.
and we are people who I feel have lost the power of choice. So it's like, we drink and it takes us, and so that I think is the difference between people who had a teenage rebellious years with alcohol and they look like they might be alcoholic, but here's the truth: they had a problem with alcohol. They're not alcoholics because alcoholics don't have problem. They have a problem with alcohol, but it ain't the problem.
Yeah.
Right? Given a sufficient enough reason, they're not able to stop because it's a spiritual problem with alcohol solution, right? But people with alcohol problems eventually just decide to not drink that, that extreme or stop altogether, and they're just able to do it, And a lot of people always, wonder what the difference is, but there is a difference between people who have struggled with alcohol and people who are just alcoholic, man, that just can't reel it in when they want to,
Yeah.
But, that's neither here nor there. But, we all have a past, right? We all have this thing we look back on that, there's some regrets.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? There's, you don't want to live in that because we are forgiven and we live through that lens. But there are things in our life that we look back and we think, man, I wish I would have done something a little different, right? And then you see your kids and it's like, all right, I want them to live this perfect life I shouldn't have lived. And you get heartbreaking a lot of times because they're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I learned, man, this is one thing you probably should never say as a daddy. My kid would never.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you right now, if you don't want to be humbled,
Yeah.
just exclude that statement because your kid might do it.
Yeah.
I hear it all the time. My kid would never. Not my kid. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
your kid was first. Actually.
Well, it's almost like, bro, like they came from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know what I was capable
Yeah, I'm about to
of
say, if I was
doing.
capable of it, then I'd have to believe they're probably capable of it too.
But we also look back and realize those things made us who we are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we know it's going to equally do the same for our kids. And man, shielding kids from temptation is not good parenting.
Yeah.
Like you said, you give them what you can. You let your wisdom shine from your pain. You give them an unshakable foundation, and the rest you just sort of have to trust God with them, man, because you would worry yourself sick over your kids and not have any peace if you tried to micromanage that, man, especially as they get older.
Yep.
Because I have one that's older than your. How old is your oldest daughter?
My oldest daughter, it will be 21.
So
in December.
I have a 23-year-old.
Okay.
Which obviously I had at 16, which I don't recommend having kids at kids, but I know a little bit about that, trying to micromanage that. And
Yep, I got a 20 going on 21 and 18 going on 19, and of course the youngest is 9 going on 10.
She might be 9 going on 30.
Yeah.
Hey, he's got how old Sky?
Yeah,
7?
so I got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old boy.
Yeah.
9-year-old girl, 5-year-old boy. So
Yeah.
I can tell you my first one, though, she's an old soul. I think she was 40 years old when she was 10.
yeah. Yeah.
And
You know,
of
you
course, they're
see
so
that a lot
different.
in women. You don't
Yeah.
see that in
I
men.
feel like that's a lot like my daughter too,
Yeah.
man. Like, cause my son is not. He's a hammer.
Well, I
Yeah.
watch my son, and it's like, you know, at 10, 11, like, he don't really care about the girls right now. But it's like the girls are way more mature than these boys
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Like, these boys are over here, like, and like, I'm thinking these 12 and 13-year-old girls are just like so mature, like, what? And you see that a lot in the ladies.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
They seem to, some of them, be a lot more wiser than their age,
Yeah.
you know, beyond their years.
So I guess it's because we got testosterone and they don't.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah, girls definitely mature faster than boys, that's
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I think I was girl crazy from the time I was.
That's
4 or
what I
5
thought
years
so,
old.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
You know, I think
that's why God gave me girls, probably because he's like,
Yeah, I'm gonna show you.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna show you.
there's no doubt,
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
But I think there's a difference in raising girls and boys, you know, and I think, you know, raising girls for me, it's a lot harder because I didn't even have to discipline my girl. I could look at her and it'd break her heart. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't even have to I go to discipline her and I just look at her some type of way. And bro, she stole my heart from the jump. Like, if mom don't take care of this, we may not get it taken care of.
I got having 3 different girls with 3 completely different personalities. Yeah, the oldest I could give the look to, and she would just melt. I could probably count on one hand how many spankings I've had to give her, which I believe in spankings, by the way.
Yeah, we all
parents-
3 have been we have been spanked with hickories, end of belts.
horse whips.
Yeah, it don't matter. Combs, brush, anything my mom could grab.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the generation we came from, for sure.
My mom had this horse crop, and when you ride in English, you'll see that person just with that crop, and they're hitting the rear end of the horse trying to get them to go faster. And my mom, that was her favorite tool.
You'll never forget that.
No, never would. Yeah, actually, she couldn't find that crop one day, and she said, "Have you seen my horse crop?"
You got rid of it, didn't you?
I have no idea.
I hadn't seen it, Mom.
What's a horse crop?
Yeah.
You got tired of that.
Gotta keep up with your stuff, Mom.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Is your
so-
mom still living?
She is.
She gonna listen to this and know you took her horse crop. I'm sending it to her, Chad.
Yeah, I
I'm
knew it.
admitting nothing.
Hey, John, you have to edit that part out.
Yeah, she'll find it probably and still come after me. With
Ain't no doubt.
Yeah, but yeah, it's funny the difference with your kids. Because probably actually my 2 oldest I can count on one hand how many times I've had to, and then my youngest, I can count on that same hand daily how many times I've had to spank her.
Absolutely.
She is just like her mama. Yeah, she's just like her mama.
We say a lot of times when we spank our kids, it's like I'm trying to spank me out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, this ain't working. And I'm trying to get him, like whooping him, and now I'm trying to whoop him for the last 3 times I should have whooped him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just looking at me like, I remember my son looked at me one time and said, that didn't hurt.
Yeah. A chipper has done that to me several times.
And I thought to myself, boy,
I said, Hannah, you better get your son.
bro, but dude, sometimes whooping just don't faze them.
Sometimes it don't.
But for me, I honestly want to say that like spankings, I can remember from a young. I mean, my mama would wear now. My dad wouldn't really whoop me. Like he'd take me in the room and he'd say, "Now you act like you crying." He'd hit the bed.
Yeah.
But my mother, she ain't play. But I'm telling you, man, I think that kept me in line a lot longer than I would have because of the brain remembering the pain.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not doing that because I'm not about to go home and get this spanking.
Yeah.
And I think it worked for a long time for me, man.
I remember as a kid, I just wanted to kind of make a point when we were talking about this because the discipline was so necessary for me. And I hated it then. Absolutely hated it. But it created in me a healthy fear of my parents. And it kept me from doing some things that I feel like other kids that don't have the oversight or the parenting, unfortunately, in their lives, they don't have those boundaries placed internally at a young age like I did. And I just remember being scared of my dad. I love my dad. I care about, like, I love him, great dad. But I just remember thinking that thought would cross my mind, and I'd be like, hey, probably don't want to do that, because if your dad finds out, he's going to grab you by one arm, hold you up, and wear that thing out. And so I just feel like a lot of kids just, they don't have that.
No.
Or they don't get to experience that, those boundaries being placed by our parents in them, you know?
Yeah. Well, I remember Tony Evans saying one time about God, he said, you know, he's slow to anger, right? And he's full of mercy. He said, but at the end of the day, there's a side of him that he can't help but to be. And there comes a time where he pulls his belt off.
Yep.
And then he turns us over to the consequences of our behavior. And I just realized that a lot of, as I get older, that helps me too, is a healthy fear of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there are some things today that I don't do because of the fear of God. You know, like, it's just a part of the way that, you know, I've learned to love God and to realize there's just some boundaries, man, that I do not want to stomp. You know, I don't want to be turned over to a reprobate mind or over to the consequence of my behavior, man. So I think some of that is things that our world is trying to get away from, or they're deeming it this or that. But I think for me, man, I think it's I always think that some of these kids today, if they just get some whoopings, hey, I can tell you never got a whooping. You know what I mean?
Your mouth,
Come on
your
over
mouth
here.
says you need a whooping.
There's no doubt.
Yep.
So, man, so did you play any type of sports through school?
Yeah, I played baseball, played football. You know, really, and that was one reason I wanted to go to public school so bad, so I could play football, because Oakwood didn't have football. I'm assuming they don't still have
No, I don't think so. The only Christian school I know does football is Anderson Christian School, and I don't know if that's through high school or not.
Yeah, I know there's
Maybe.
the Cavalier team.
Yeah, that's the
I
same
think.
team. Yeah,
Oh,
Anderson Christian, yeah.
And but you know, I did that, and it was fun and all. And of course, I didn't play in college or anything. I went to Anderson College after
AU.
Now AU.
Have you taken a have you got a tour through the new facility?
Yeah, so I actually teach there part time. So
really?
yeah,
What do
yeah.
you teach?
So criminal justice.
How
Go
about
figure.
that,
I
bro?
didn't know. You wouldn't guess
See,
that.
dude, that's pretty cool.
He's a teacher.
Yeah.
How about it?
Yeah, that's
I,
pretty cool.
I went to Anderson College, and you know, back then they didn't have a criminal justice program, and so I majored in what they call liberal studies, which is not studying of liberal side of politics. It's just like a liberal arts degree. You know, it's basically general studies, if you will, because I changed my major 4 or 5 times, and college was probably, sounds like, you know, with your experience, I definitely rebelled more in college. I lost my dad my freshman year in college. And right towards the end of that year, he had cancer. He was diagnosed with cancer right before I started my freshman year, and died right before I finished my freshman year. And, you know, as a, well, I guess 19-year-old then, you know, it's God's fault. Just, you know.
Yeah.
And,
100%.
Yeah.
yeah. So, you know, that set me on a spiral, I think, that kind of put me out of control. And, you know, I got almost through college and dropped out. And that's when I joined the Army. So that was probably the best thing I ever did. And it was probably a God-led thing, because I don't even know why I did. And I've never had any interest in serving in the military or anything, but all of a sudden I did. Just like that.
Yeah.
And I think I had seen, you know, after seeing Saving Private Ryan.
What a great movie.
Such a good movie.
Oh, man, it came out in 98.
Yeah.
Isn't it 4 hours, though?
No, it's
No. Which one
close
is
to
that with
3.
Tom Hanks in it that's Forever Castaway? I think that's the one that's like really long. But that's a great movie.
Yeah, Castaway surely could have been condensed in about 45 minutes.
Oh, no doubt.
Saving Private Ryan is probably the best
one of the best stories
war movie, and it's the best start
Yeah.
to a movie.
It is. And very surreal.
Yeah.
Is that are you saying that movie encouraged your decision?
I think so because my grandfather was in the 101st, my mother's father. So I told you about her. She grew up in children's homes and stuff like that. She had dysfunctional childhood and all that. But her dad, who wanted my mom and her brothers and sister, loved him, but he was an alcoholic, and the state wouldn't give him the kids because he was constantly in trouble and everything else. So, but anyway, a lot of that is probably because of his experiences in war as a 17-year-old. But fast forward, to my time, I went in, but anyway, I saw that movie, and I was like, wow, this is, these are real heroes, And I don't know, it's just a God-led thing. I went in, and that's actually how I kind of got interested in law enforcement because there's a lot of similarities between the military and law enforcement, rank structure and chain of command, stuff like that. And but yeah, I think that really kind of turned myself around. Now, when I came back, I finished school and everything, and actually went back and got my master's degree. And
How about that, Chad?
yep. And so
How long did you serve in the military?
I did 8 years of reserves and National Guard. So when I went, after you finished basic and everything, it was still a time where you could, you after you finished, do you want to choose to go full-time Army, reserves, or National Guard? National Guard, I didn't know much about, so I said, well, I'm going to do the reserves because I'd already decided I'm going to apply with Anderson County or Greenville County Sheriff's Office. And
Now, are you married at this point?
Nope.
You don't even know Leanne.
Nope, don't know Leanne.
That's wow. And how old are you at this juncture?
Let's see. I was 20. Well, I guess 20 going into 21, because I was 21 when I finished basic, and because by the time I got hired with the sheriff's office, I finished the basic at the police academy and all when I was 22. So, yeah, I did. So I did 2 years. So I chose the reserves. I said the reserve sounds good, and that way I can pursue my law enforcement career. I didn't like the reserves. It was the most boring thing I ever did. And 9/11 happened about a year after I had joined. And, we're all like, send me, come on, let's go, And nothing was happening with our reserve unit. So all my buddies said, switch over to the National Guard, and because, if you notice, that's National Guard gets sent everywhere these days. So I switched over to the actually here in Anderson to the 263rd AAMDC, served over there for about 6 more years, got to really go to some cool places, had a cool detail over there, and so it was a good experience. But after 8 years, matter of fact, Leanne was like, law enforcement, military, you're never home on the weekend.
Yeah.
Choose one.
You're going to have to pick one or the other. And so, anyway, I stuck with law enforcement. But it was the right thing for me to do at the right time. Got a sense of serving my country through that whole experience. But also it gave me a sense of direction and discipline that I needed. So my parents disciplined me, obviously. I got spankings all the time and restriction and everything else. But it was something I needed to, I think, reverse the very disobedient, rebellious me at that time. And it kind of gave me some guidelines and structure that I needed at the time. Because my mom couldn't. She couldn't do that.
Yeah.
She just, So it was best move. I think that was a God move for me, even though I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well, it's interesting how God prepares us for what it is we have no idea we're going into.
Yeah.
And so what makes you probably one of the best sheriffs we ever had is some of those experiences. I feel like that's preparation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Like you said, I never had an idea, but then I do. Sometimes I feel like that's just God moving me into my destiny. That's just preparation for what I can't learn there that I need to learn here to go into these seasons of my life. And you look back and you think, now that's why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There weren't always favorable emotional experiences, but looking back, it's the best things that ever happened to us.
100%.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it's like, wow, it does. It has a ripple effect. Everything that you do, every decision that you make, and that's why I've always told my girls it's very important. be careful about the decisions you make because it affects decisions you make next. And it's a ripple effect. And,
Yeah.
But no, God's been good to me even when I wasn't good to Him.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And it's just why. I mean, I don't deserve it. None of us do. But God obviously has been good to all of us.
Yes, He has.
Sitting in this room. And,
Yeah, he has.
but yeah, that's kind of how I got on the path of where I'm at now, and it's one thing for sure is flown by. It feels like
A blink.
Y'all are behind me. I'm 45, but it's it just like that. It's, wow, where did time go? How do I have a 20-year-old, almost 21-year-old daughter? And it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, time is. They say it's a thief.
It is.
And I mean, for myself, like I try, like when we go on these weekends to play baseball and stuff, I really try to just make myself slow down and take it in because
They're gone.
I mean, my youngest is 12, and it's like, man, I feel like yesterday he was just born, and my wife always tells me, you better slow down because before you know it, he ain't gonna want to do these things with you.
You're right.
So it, those kind of things bring us down to size and help us to try to cherish the moment, because. I mean, I'm about to be 41, 45, and CJ's in his mid-30s. Like, we still never, even at a young age, thought about that. I remember thinking my dad's 33. Like, that's old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm 12, 13. I got a long life to live. And then you blink your eyes, and you're 41 with a 12-year-old, and it's just like, where did all this go?
Yeah. It's funny too. This is completely irrelevant to God or whatever we're talking about, but you ever look back at your parents and go, like, hey, I'm 40 years old or 40, in my case, 45, and you look back and go, or you look at your pictures of your parents when they were 40 and 45, you're like, wow, they look old.
Oh,
I know I don't look this old at 40.
No, they do.
They do. And it's maybe it was just the style and the trim.
I think that was it.
Yeah, that's what it had to be, the bell bottles.
Cameras.
It was the cameras. It was the cameras.
Do you feel like the time that you served in the military and obviously what you do now in law enforcement, that you learned just a certain level of accountability, not just to yourself but to other people?
Yeah, no, I think if you're in a service role, which y'all are here too, but obviously when you're in a service role, and especially a volunteer service role, that there is you're accountable to everybody, but because you're serving everybody, and you're serving your country or your community or your town, and it's no, I think there's for me there's a lot of responsibility to that, which obviously accountability is part of that. But it is, I've always had that, I guess, service mindset. That's what I've always once I've, learned that, when I got away and got my head screwed on straight, from there it was, I want to serve.
Yeah.
I want to serve to the very best of my ability, and I know, law enforcement is not everybody's favorite, especially right now in some parts of the country. And I think we live in a great area, though. But, it is about service. Yeah.
Well, you said something earlier that we use here for our guys, because these guys come to us and, there's not, you can't really assume that they were raised like us.
That's right.
And so one of the things we implement is what you call the chain of command.
Yeah.
And the ability to understand that there is order, there is authority, and that you don't get to live a quality of life independently of either. And even if you read the Bible, you see God is a God of order.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And we teach these men, the this idea of authority and this idea of being able to submit to authority, whether it be a senior group of guys that's been here longer, whether it be their house manager or their assistant or men's director. You know, we teach them to learn how to get under that covering, because that is the way that things work in the world, you know. And it's clear that in this world we live in a time where people are they don't want to be subject to authority. They hate it. But in my life, I have, like, look, man, I used to come into conflict with law enforcement prior to getting sober every month. I've been sober almost 19 years. I've never had one conflict with the law. And I think there's something spiritual about being submitted to authority, because if you're not, it finds you. You know what I mean? There's something about it that, you know, it's like you ever
attract it.
Well, like you attract it. It's like, you know, now I ain't had no conflict with the law, but it's like when I'm doing something wrong, I'm looking over and they showing like there's something spiritual, I think, about that too, that you're not avoiding in this world when you're suppressing lies or you're suppressing truth for lies. Like you're really not going to avoid those consequences. Like they're eventually it's coming to the light, you know? Don't you agree?
I 100% agree. And I think the biggest thing that we see here concerning guys who struggle with addiction and alcoholism is their life is simply a life that has no order. It has no order, and it cannot submit to authority. And so what you said and what I asked you about accountability is that when we get our priorities straight, and now I'm serving God, and He is where everything's coming from, and He is why I'm doing what I'm doing, the other parts kind of fall into place. But until that thing gets put where it's supposed to be, which here we you know, work the 12 steps, and we believe that's step 3. When that thing really gets put into place, and now I'm living my life for God and through God, then everything else starts to work itself out.
That's right.
Because like you're obviously serving the community, you're serving Anderson, you're serving everybody that elected you into the sheriff's office, but you boil all that away, and like Chad serves God. You know, Chad serves God, which is why you are so effective, and which is why your heart is so pure and your motives are so pure in what you do, because you're serving God. And when we're serving God and we're pleasing God, and that's the priority of our life, then everything else seems to work. But as soon as that gets off base, or you see, you know, I'm sure other departments or other places in the nation where there's corruption or this or that or the third, well, it's just because God's not where He's supposed to be at in the equation.
That's right.
You know, like
and then, you know, there could be corruption anywhere, though. And that's and you know, certainly, you know, matter of fact, I used to be the internal affairs guy at the sheriff's office, and you know, had to deal with that. But no, and I tell my people that you know, and I'm not, you know, I'm probably, you know, I would be naive to think that everybody that works for me is saved. I wish they were, and hope they will be. But I tell them they're doing the Lord's work.
That's it.
Because you know, and because we are, I believe we are, because there is an authority and there is order, and should be law and order, and there's law and order in the Bible. And you know, but that's I do feel like that's what we're doing. And but my heart does go out to the folks. I've encountered them my whole career. I've been doing this for 23 years, so you know, my heart definitely goes out to folks. And I will say this: I've learned a lot. You know, when I was a young deputy at 22 years old, you know, and going on these calls and encountering people that had, you know, back then it was crack was a big deal. You know, meth hadn't quite hit the scene. It hit the scene just a few years later. Crack addictions, you know, maybe cocaine and some other stuff. But, you know, in my mind, I'm like, why in the world would you choose this path? And then, of course, as I got older and wiser and, you know, gained a more perspective, especially after I had children, that changes your perspective on everything.
It does.
Or it should, you know. But, you know, after that, I started seeing people, you know, not just bad guys who are breaking the law. Because that's you categorize everybody when you're young like that, and then as a young officer, and then as you develop, you realize there's way more to it than that.
Yes, it's not black and white.
No, it's not black and white. And some people have good upbringings that are in this lifestyle.
Oh, 100%.
Some of them don't. Some of them never had an upbringing.
Yep.
And they've never had an authority figure in their life, and some of them have had great authority figures in their life. But it's we were talking before the show, me and Bradley, about it. You know, we all have addictive personalities, and it's so easy for any of us to fall into an addiction. You know, one of my guilty pleasures, I guess, and somewhat addicted. There's a small fly here. I know you probably can't see it.
Yeah, no, it's been,
What's he doing? Yeah.
it's been getting me over here too.
Just spastic.
Yeah.
So, but you know, I've struggled with dip and chewing tobacco. You know, it's been one of those things that, and that's certainly not a healthy habit to have. You know, but that's one of those things. I don't know if that got in my blood when my first 10 years in Texas.
In
or
Brenham,
what.
Texas.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, that's a
normal.
Texas thing.
It's a shot they give you. Oh, you will have chewing tobacco the rest of your life. But you know, it's I love seeing the guys that have come through the Bridge Center and the program, and seeing, watching them on social media and celebrating their recovery. That's amazing, by the way.
Because that ain't always a side you get to see.
But that's also it's also something that we really haven't had in this community until y'all came around.
Yeah.
And and you don't, that's not always the side we get to see. We see the same people, it seems, over and over and over. And I'm all about helping people, second chances. You know, if you're coming, if we have to arrest you and your first, second time offense, non-violent, offender, if you've committed violence, obviously you're going to have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But I will do what I can to sign off on you getting some help.
Yeah.
We will try to work with you. I don't know that the drug court is as active as it could be, but we participate in that. I have a deputy that participates with that program, and cares a lot about that program. And but it's the more, and of course, it benefits our community too from a non-Christian perspective. It's reducing recidivism anyway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So I mean,
that's the
it's just
objective.
plus
I mean,
plus.
is to produce productive members of society.
Exactly.
Getting back into working and paying taxes and all these other things that allows us the quality of life we have here.
Yeah.
I mean, I just tell people all the time, man, like, wake up one day and just don't have no law enforcement, don't have no type of judicial system, and see what this
Chaos.
It's just like being here, CJ.
Yep.
Imagine me and you are not here. We set no structure. We have nobody to enforce rules. This would be a trap house.
Yeah.
That's all it would be.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I hear different terms of, defund the police. Go ahead and do it one time.
Yeah.
You'll realize real quick how important it is and what they do that you don't
dog
see
won't hunt.
matters. Because at the end of the day, man, authority is rightful use of power that's been delegated to us to be able to live. I mean, it's just the way it is, man.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when I get on board with the way it is, my life gets better. When I rebel against it, I tend to have negative consequences. But, I just think that's the way it is. Everybody answers to somebody. Yeah. It's healthy.
I would like to add too, though, some of the, current events, with us being connected with the county that, y'all are so gracious to, grant us part of the opioid relief fund, which afforded us 10 scholarships to help with what you're talking about, the recidivism and these guys potentially getting treatment. Me and Bradley and Chris Yates have been up to the jail numerous times doing interviews and, trying to find the ones that God would have here.
Yeah.
And so it's not just all talk and press conferences, like it's happening.
Yeah.
Like things are shaking.
Oh yeah. People are getting better. Things are changed.
Yeah.
I mean, we see that difference being happening in our town,
It's incredible.
It is.
It's really, it is. And I mean, man, I love Anderson. I was born and raised here, and I want to leave it better than I found it.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I have that opportunity in this vein, but, we're not able to do what we do productively without what y'all do. Like it's all working together for the good of our community and the families and children. And, there's just a facet for everything everybody does. It all matters, and it's just ours are really on parallel tracks at times, of being able to provide men with the help they need,
Yeah.
So it's really cool to watch, man.
Yeah.
It has.
Yeah.
It's been really good. And what I realized though when I started making these jail visits, doing interviews, hey, the local rehab facility's coming up here. You might want to go tell them that you need help so you can get out. And they think it's funny because they think it's a get out of jail free card. I'm like, it has nothing to do with you getting out of jail.
Yeah.
There's no contingencies involved in this. Like you're gonna be free to go home or come to the Bridge Center. So, like, you're not getting out of jail. And I got Joe Schmo and all of his buddies wanting to do an interview with me to come. And I'm like, listen, man, like, you can go home. Like, that's the point of this. Or you can have a change of heart and a change of life. And the trajectory of the way your life has been could change drastically in these next 4, 5, 6 months of a decision that you would make, man. And I feel like we could make a million bad decisions, but you make one good decision, which is turning your will and life over to God and surrendering to Jesus, that then God starts putting people in your path that start teaching you and disciplining you and showing you the way to go. And, this couch is, all three of us sitting here are products of seeds that were sown at young ages that, we couldn't run away from.
Yeah.
We tried. I think we all tried, but we couldn't run away from it. And it's just really cool to see the vein in which God is using all of us to bring hope and health to people,
Well, before we let Chad shoot this 3-pointer to find out if he can make a bucket.
And you get free merch, by the way. Like,
So there's a hallway full of free merch.
Nice.
Hat, shirt, hoodies, whatever you want when you leave, grab it. Yeah. But I want to conclude with this statement that I feel like we all can relate to, that even in the hard work and the duty of what we're called to do, I think the most heartbreaking thing is that we can't make the people that we're serving change.
Yeah.
Like, we have servant hearts, and a lot of what we do is for the good of someone else. But the most heart-wrenching thing is that I look at you, and it don't have to end this way.
Yeah.
It don't have to continue to be a revolving door. You don't have to end up in prison for the rest of your life. Like, these are things we're doing to create, because when you get locked up, it's really an intervention of something greater than you stepping into what you're not going to stop doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
To allow you to have a moment of clarity to where you say, I've got to, like, my decisions has got me here. This is an intervention to help me have an opportunity to change. And then to watch them not take the opportunity is heartbreaking.
It's tough.
It is.
It's heartbreaking. And I think that may be the hardest thing. But I think that apart from those people, our frame of reference is the several people that have turned a corner, is outside of the system, good daddies, job, employer, employees, they're doing great things. And I think when we focus on those, we realize that we're making a difference. And Chad, keep doing what you're doing, man. And hopefully at this election, you'll get a couple more people to come on your team and help you continue to do it great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, Chad. See what you got, buddy.
All right. Let's see.
Yeah, you can take those off.
Take those off. Yeah.
All right, man. You got to get it.
I'm usually so good at this.
Hey, great job. Again, Mr. Chad Mcbride in the house. Thank you so much for coming. Until next time.
Peace.
Sure.